Hey y'all, today I want to talk about the dangers of complaining. All right. And me personally, I know the dangers of complaining firsthand because there's been moments in my life where I have done nothing but complain. So I know what consequences complaining bring firsthand. Right. So we go back and look over the history of Israel. Look at what happened to them when they complained. Right. So if you look, obviously the trip from Egypt to Israel to the promised land, it wasn't a smooth journey, right? It was rough. Sometimes they didn't have water. He always supplied water, but they didn't have the access to water like we do today. Sometimes they wanted meat. The trip just wasn't a comforting trip, and because of this, Israel complained. So if you think about where Israel came from, they came from Egypt, right? Where they were slaves, but their masters fed them good, right? So that they can continue to be good slaves. They didn't have to worry about whether they would be able to eat. They didn't have to worry about what they would be able to wear, what they would drink. They didn't have to worry about those things, But as Yahuwah the Father took them out into the wilderness, he wanted to shape and mold them into a set apart people, right? He wanted to test them and to prove them, right? He wanted to prepare them to be a Kodesh, a holy people, to go into the promised land so that they may conduct themselves a certain way so that the world and the other nations around them may know who he is, right? He did all of these things to humble them. But Israel was very rebellious. They didn't agree with many of the things that God was doing. The journey was rough. And because of all of these things, Israel complained. All right. So if we take a look at three of the accounts where Israel complained and look at the consequences, we can find out ourselves how dangerous complaining is. All right. One time Israel complained because they didn't have meat, right? They said in Egypt we ate meat, but we out here traveling in the wilderness and we don't have meat. So they complained against Moses. What are you going to do? Why did you bring us out here in the wilderness to die? And Moses basically told them, whenever you complain, you're not complaining against me. You're complaining against God. All right. And that's something very important for us to understand also. Whenever we complain, whenever you moan and groan and you let all this negative stuff come out your mouth, you're complaining against God because he is the one that's in control. He is the one that allowed you to be in the position that you're in. That's what we have to understand. All right. We have to give an accounting of our words. We have to be careful what we say. Right. So Moses told them, why are you complaining against me? I'm just a man. I can do nothing. Me and Aaron, we're just vessels. We can't do nothing. You're not complaining against me. You're complaining against God, right? So they complained that they didn't have meat. So Yahuwah the Father gave them meat, but while it was still in between their teeth, he sent the plague on them and they died from it, right? So he gave them what they wanted, but he struck them down. All right, that's one example of what happens when we complain. Yah, he may give you what you want, but it may come with consequences. Because sometimes he just get tired of hearing all that stuff. If you want it that bad, here, take it, and you're gonna get what comes with it. All right. Another time where Israel complained, they rebelled against Moses. Right. I can't remember exactly who it was, but anyways, God opened up the earth. It was an earthquake. They were complaining. He opened up the earth and the earth swallowed them up. What it sounds like to me, it sounds like it was an earthquake. All right. This was the second account of them complaining. Because of their complaining, God, his wrath consumed them, right? And the earth swallowed them up. All right. Now, another time would have been like where they were complaining. They were out in the wilderness and they were complaining about something. I can't exactly remember what it was, but what God did, his response was he sent fiery serpents on them, right? And they stung them and they attacked them. All right. This was a result of Israel's complaining. All right. So every time Israel complained, not every time, because a lot of the times he had grace and mercy on them and he just let them slide. But whenever Yahuwah the Father got fed up with it, his wrath would consume them. All right. This is why it is very, very dangerous to complain. And like I said, I know this firsthand because there's been times in my life where I've complained. All right. I'll give you an example. I used to be a truck driver, an over-the-road truck driver, right? I've traveled the country, for the last 10 years, been to every single state, including Canada, right? but I've never been to Alaska and Hawaii. As I travel the country, there's a very liberating feeling that you have when you just get in that truck and go. You're making money. You're traveling the country. You don't have nobody telling you what to do. You're just driving on back roads. You're driving through big cities and stuff. You're making all this money. You're eating what you want. You're buying clothes. You're buying shoes. It's a very liberating feeling that I had as a truck driver, right? But when I was out there, I had a relationship with God, but I wasn't dependent on him as much as he wanted me to, because I had money, right? My happiness came from my job. I was self-sufficient. Anything I needed, anything I wanted, I worked for it and I got it, right? So I had a close relationship with God, but sooner or later, a time was going to come where I had to grow, right? And whenever you grow in your relationship with God, he may have to take some things from you, because he needs to humble you and he wants you to depend on him. All right. And that's what happened. Long story, make it short. God brought me off the road with a hard hand, unexpectedly, abruptly, violently. Unexpected. I didn't expect it. It's a whole testimony behind what happened, man. But God brought me off the road. And when I came home, I was angry. I was angry because I lost everything that I worked for. My credit went down. Everything that I was building out there just disappeared. Like all in a couple of weeks. And I was angry because I wasn't used to being broke. I wasn't used to asking people for help. I wasn't used to depending on God, because if I needed something, I got it myself. You see what I'm saying? I was accustomed to doing whatever I wanted to do. But this was a point in my life where God needed me to grow in my relationship. And for me to grow, I had to pass this stage. All right. Now, I'm going to let y'all know one thing. Whenever it comes time for you to grow in your relationship with God, if you refuse any stage, the process comes to an end. All right. Whenever things get hard because God is trying to take you to the next level in your relationship with him, if you refuse and you don't want to go to the next level, your progress comes to an end. There's no such thing as I'm gonna just stay right here. There's no such thing as I'm gonna just remain stagnant. If you're not growing, you're falling behind. There's no such thing as just remaining right here with God. Either you're going up or you're going down. All right, there's no gray area. There's no in between. So anyways, he brought me off the road and I'm broke. I don't have money. He's trying to shape me and mold me into a person that depends on him. And during this whole transition, I'm complaining. I'm angry. I'm rebellious. My spirit got so dark. And because of my complaining, I separated myself from God. You see what I'm saying? That's what happens when you complain. You separate yourself from God, because complaining is a sin. Complaining is a sin. Whenever you allow that stuff to come out your mouth, you're complaining against God. You're speaking harshly against him. And what it does is it separates you from him, and it allows a dark force to come over your life. All right. When you complain, darkness overcomes you. It's a dangerous path. Ain't no telling whenever you're living a life of complaining, it's no telling what may happen to you. All right. You need to repent immediately. So anyways, God is trying to build my faith up on him. And, I'm angry, I'm rebelling, and what I learned during this process is if he loves you and he knows that you really want to have a relationship with you, he's not going to take his foot off your neck. He's just going to allow you to sit there until you learn how to be grateful, until you learn how to be humble. He's going to allow you to sit up there and suffer in pain until you learn that he is the Most High, until you learn that he is the control. All right. And that's what stops us from growing a lot of times. He's trying to take us to the next level. And instead of acknowledging him and being grateful and not complaining, we just end up hardening our heart. All right. And the rebellion and the darkness overcomes us and we become bitter people. But that's not what was supposed to happen. You were supposed to grow and make it to the next stage. Right. So Yahuwah the Father, he set me there until I learned how to suffer without complaining. Until I learn how to be broke without complaining, until I learn how to move forward without getting the things that I want. That's what you have to learn how to do in your relationship with God. You have to learn how to move forward without getting the things you want. All right. To maintain a healthy relationship with Yahuwah the Father, you have to be selfless. You have to. I don't think we understand the extent of how this faith thing is not about us. It's not. Everything we do in this faith is to build up his kingdom, is to worship and acknowledge him, is to help others. It's not about us. All right. He's going to take care of us. That's why it's important for you to stay close to him. It's important for you to abstain from sin, because whenever you sin, you're going to reap the consequences. And now you may not be able to do what he wants you to do because you're living in a season of darkness, because you're reaping the consequences of your sins. Now you can't do what he wanted you to do because you got to be punished for a little bit. He got to spank you. He got to whoop you up for a little bit. All right. Now, with all that being said, if we go to the book of Malachi, basically Yahuwah the Father was speaking through Malachi, and Malachi was telling Israel some of the things that the Father had against them. All right. And if we go to Malachi chapter 2, Malachi says to Israel, this is Yahuwah the Father speaking through his spirit through Malachi. You have wearied Yahuwah with your words. But you have said, in what way have we wearied him? And that you say, everyone who does evil is good in the eyes of Yahuwah, and he is delighting in them. Where is the God of right ruling? Now, this is something I feel personally, because I have been guilty of saying this. If you don't understand, I'll break it down a little bit. God is telling Israel that they are wearying in him with their words, and they respond, well, how are we doing that? It's because you say that everyone who does evil is good in the eyes of God. That is a sin when you think like that. Whenever you think like that, whenever you say God is not avenging us, he's letting these wicked people get away with stuff. Everyone who does evil is good in his eyes. Whenever you say stuff like that, it's speaking harshly against him. It makes him tired. You're wearying him with your words. That's what Israel had a bad habit of doing. They had a bad habit of complaining and accusing God of letting people get away with stuff. All right. And he says, the end of that passage says, where is the God of right ruling? So they're basically saying, if you're a God of right ruling, then where are you? You know, and if we go to chapter 3, verses 13, Malachi says something very similar. He says, of course, Yahuwah the Father is speaking through his spirit. He says, your words have been harsh against me, says Yahuwah. But you, Israel, have said, in what way have we spoken harsh against you? You have said it is worthless to serve God. And what did we gain when we guarded his commands? And when we walked as mourners before Yahuwah of hosts? All right. God is telling Israel, he's telling them something that he has against them, and what they built a bad habit of, possessing an attitude that basically expresses, or what they're saying is, we don't gain anything from serving God. That's what Israel's attitude is. This is what he's telling them. He has something against them. You have said it is worthless to serve God. And what did we gain when we guarded his charge and when we walked as mourners before Yahuwah of hosts? So what Israel is saying is, there's no point in serving God because we don't gain anything from it. God, he hears you when you say stuff like that. He's listening to you and you're wearying in him. It's very important that we don't possess an attitude like this. And trust me, I know, because I possessed an attitude like this myself. I've been through this personally. I know the dangers of complaining. I reap the consequences of complaining. There's been seasons in my life where I've complained and I've seen firsthand what it does to you. It separates you from God, and it gives power to your problems. It makes things worse. Whenever you say those things out your mouth, God is listening to you. All right. So that's just something important that we should consider in our relationship with him. And then in verse 15, it says, now we call the proud blessed. Not only are the doers of wickedness built up, but they also try God and escape. So Israel is saying the proud, they are blessed. Not only are the doers of wickedness built up, but they also try God and escape. All right. So these are some of the things that God has against Israel. It's very important that we make sure that we do not have an attitude like that. You know, because whenever you think like that, whenever you say God lets wicked people get away from stuff with stuff, it's not true, because he doesn't. He doesn't. And he doesn't like when we think like that, because it's a lie. We're lying on him. He doesn't let anybody get away with anything. All right. So this is something that I've learned in my relationship with God, and I just wanted to share that experience with y'all. All right. Y'all take it easy out there.